Making headlines for this week of January 30th. The heat is on. Greek leadership must now act, and European cabal leaders sweat about what may come next. Refusing to serve. Ukrainians risking penalty and punishment by avoiding military draft as Western agenda continues to be exposed. Canadian levitation. Latest Snowden revelations identify secret Canadian agency as having a leading role in online spying. And making hemp while the sun shines. Political and financial initiatives to further advance the hemp industry in the U.S.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. As the pre-election polls indicated, the leftist party Syriza has managed to pull off a stunning upset in the Greek election held last Sunday, the 25th. GraphicNews.org reported the following results from the Greek Interior Ministry after the election. The Syriza party, a leftist party, received 149 seats, which was the most, although it was still 2 seats short of an absolute majority. The former governing party fell from 127 to 76 seats. To Potami, a centrist party, and Golden Dawn, a neo-Nazi party, both received 17 seats. The Communist Party received 15 seats. PASOK, a socialist party, and Independent Greeks, a right-wing nationalist party, both received 13 seats. Paul Mason, writing for the London Guardian, noted on January 25th that the rise of Syriza can't just be explained by the crisis in the Eurozone. A youthful generation of professionals has had enough of tax-evading oligarchs. It is testimony to 3 things: the strategic crisis of the Eurozone, the determination of the Greek elite to cling to systemic corruption, and a new way of thinking among the young. Of these, the Eurozone's crisis is easiest to understand because its consequences can be read so easily in the macroeconomic figures. The IMF predicted Greece would grow as a result of its aid package in 2010. Instead, the economy has shrunk by 25%. Wages are down by the same amount. Youth unemployment stands at 60%, and that is among those who are still in the country. So the economic collapse, about which all Greeks, both right and left-wing, are bitter, is not just seen as a material collapse. It demonstrated complete myopia among the European policy elite. The voice of the people now puts the country on a collision course with Europe. In an article by Ian Traynor and Helena Smith on the 26th, they write that voters handed power to Alexis Tsipras, the charismatic 40-year-old former communist who leads the umbrella coalition of assorted leftists known as Syriza. And European politics has been plunged into a volatile new era following this historic victory in Greece's general election by far-left radicals committed to ending years of austerity. Traynor and Smith also add that for an upstart party such as Syriza, which has never been tested in power, the victory highlighted how 5 years of fiscal orthodoxy in Europe have turned politics upside down. The damning popular verdict on Europe's response to financial meltdown is a haunting outcome for the EU's political elite. For the first time, power has been handed to populist outsiders deeply opposed to Brussels and Berlin, albeit not anti-European, unlike their counterparts on the far right across the EU. For the first time, a child of the European crisis, an explicitly anti-austerity party, will take office in the EU. Apostolos Fotiadis, in a Guardian commentary on January 26th, noted that as the first anti-austerity party to claim power in Europe, Syriza must navigate a political minefield. Failure will be a disaster for Greece. He says the victory has allowed the Greek people to dream again, even though the real struggle is just beginning. Owen Jones writes, "This is what the politics of hope looks like. A left that was no longer supposed to exist has returned. Neoliberalism is no longer without formidable enemies." In Spain, Podemos, which has closely aligned itself to Syriza, is surging in the polls, and similar forces may gain traction in other European countries as well. Neoliberal hegemony is, gradually and unevenly, being chipped away. Ashifa Kassam, in her article from Madrid, Spain, noted that members of the Podemos party were inspired by the election results. She writes that few followed the elections in Greece as closely as Spaniards, many of whom saw in the electoral race a preview of looming elections in their country. As news broke on Sunday that Syriza had ousted the establishment to become the first anti-austerity party to gain power in the Eurozone, the leader of the far-left Podemos party, Pablo Iglesias, reveled in the news. Another article by several contributors noted reaction across Europe from Ireland and Italy to France and Spain. The elites are scared, and the people are feeling empowered for the very first time in a long time. Austerity had been dealt a blow by democracy, he said, giving his nascent movement in Spain a foothold that could prove crucial in the coming year as municipal, regional, and general elections pit Podemos against the bipartisan political system that has ruled Spain since the death of Franco. In announcing his new government, John Henley reported on January 27th for The Guardian that the anti-bailout government of Greece's new leftist Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has been announced with the post of economics minister, chief negotiator with the country's international creditors, going to a radical economist who has described austerity programs as fiscal waterboarding. In an interview given to Paul Mason and posted on the Real News Network website on January 25th, the now-appointed Yanis Varoufakis had said the following.
What does Syriza government do in the first 100 days?
Three main things. Firstly, we need to deal with the humanitarian crisis. It's preposterous that in 2015 we had people that had jobs and homes, and some of them had shops up until a couple of years ago, are now sleeping around and are going to bed hungry at night. It is unacceptable that you have school kids doing their homework under candlelight because their electricity supply is discontinued due to the fact that the state, in its infinite wisdom, decided to tax property through the electricity bill, for God's sakes. These are things that cost very little money and have a major symbolic, social, and moral impact. So this is one of the three planks. The second thing we need to do in this country is to reform it. To reform it deeply and to reform it in a way that attacks what I call the triangle of sin. The triangle of sin in Greece comprises the procurement aspects of the state, where you have rent-seeking suppliers of the state charging an arm and a leg. A Greek motorway costs 3 times what it costs France to build a motorway. That is unacceptable. Secondly, the second part of the triangle is the bankrupt bankers who are exacting a major price. And thirdly, there must be yet which are perpetually bankrupt. And one should ask questions such as, so how can they manage to make ends meet when they've never had shown the profit?
You can almost hear, though, Mr. Varoufakis, the European centre saying, here is a left-wing party meddling with freedom of speech.
The opposite. The opposite. We're absolutely committed to freedom of speech, and freedom of speech in Greece has been jeopardized by this unholy alliance between bankrupt bankers, developers, and media owners who become the voice of those who want to sponge and scrounge of everyone else's productive efforts.
And what will you do to the oligarchy concretely?
We are going to destroy the basis upon which they have built for decade after decade a system and network that viciously sucks the energy and the economic power from everybody else in society.
It sets the stage for things to come, but as mentioned earlier, the real struggle is just beginning. Syriza is not getting its complete majority, meaning that it has to form an alliance with another party. The choice was to go either with Topotami, the centrist party, Golden Dawn, the neo-Nazi party, the Communist Party, PASOK, the Socialist Party, or the right-wing nationalist Independent Greeks. Perhaps many expected Syriza to choose To Potami, the centrist party, as it would be most closely aligned to the leftist Syriza, even though it was a pro-EU party. The options were not exactly the greatest, and perhaps this is what the global cabal was counting on as a possible ace in the hole, should Syriza win. Perhaps, surprisingly, Syriza chose to align with the right-wing Independent Greeks. From Shakespeare's The Tempest comes the quote, "Misery acquaints a man with strange bedfellows." The situation in Greece is forcing a whole new way of doing things where things were not thought possible previously. Although they share the same anti-austerity agenda, can an alliance of two very different basic ideologies survive? In the growing sphere of 5- or 5th-dimensional human and planetary consciousness, anything is possible when souls remember their humanity first above a political agenda. This remains to be seen, however. Given the success that the global cabal has historically had in influencing and rigging election outcomes, one might be surprised that Greece was able to pull off a result like this without any apparent interference. How do we really know that this just isn't another cabal scam like the one in Ukraine? If I was to give you what I believe to be the truth in this moment of now, it is this. We do not know 100% that Syriza was another cabal-created illusion to give the people a false sense of security that their vote really means something. Time will tell. The evidence, however, so far suggests that Syriza is heading in the right direction. This does not mean, however, that the cabal did not try to work its way into influencing and perhaps controlling the agenda of Syriza. There appears to be evidence to suggest that the attempt was made to subvert Syriza and limit its influence and desire to kick out cabal influences and restore more power to the people. I remind listeners of one of the ways in which this global cabal gets control of countries. Recall the quote of Mayor Amschel Rothschild, "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes the laws." The only way the global cabal has been able to secure its power has been by the consent of the people. Most people, however, have not been smart or observant enough to realize that this consent was attained through trickery, fraud, and intimidation, using the criminally corrupt financial and admiralty law legal systems. In the EU, it has happened this way. 3 unelected leaders go into the particular country. They throw billions of dollars of worthless currency at the leaders in the form of bailouts. This is money that was created out of thin air. In return, the group of 3 secure guarantees for collateral in the form of national assets that have real value, not a worthless value like the currency. In other cases, ownership and control of various national assets may also be surrendered. The repayment of this fictional debt is then dumped upon the people who are to pay for the fictional debt with their own hard-earned money and assets. Let me be perfectly clear here, folks. A government bailout loan of any kind is not beneficial for the country, nor is it beneficial for the people of a country. It is a tool that is used to scam people out of their assets while keeping people in perpetual debt, fear, separation, and thus control. Why was this seemingly unusual and unexpected alliance chosen when so many, the cabal included, might have expected them to align with the center-left To Potami? In the week leading up to the election, several sources were reporting a potential alliance between To Potami and Syriza. On January 19th, To Potami candidate Antigone Liberaki told Business Week that her party would form an alliance with Syriza should the party win. Again, on the 24th, the day before the election, News Europe reported another candidate for Topotami, Miltiadis Hirkos, as saying that Topotami could tame the Eurosceptic Syriza party and keep Greece within the European Union. It would seem, at first, that this alliance would be a pretty good choice. That is, until one digs a little deeper. A far-left separatist party and a center-left party attempting to push an alliance to keep the country in the EU. Let's explore at least one possible reason why this alliance may have been proposed and explore why Syriza may have rejected that alliance. With the assistance of Jason Bowman, a regular CVN contributor, we were able to piece together the following. The candidate mentioned moments ago, Antigone Liberaki, according to her biography on the website ivoteliberal.eu, is listed as a board member of the Action Aid nonprofit for both Greece and Kenya. At first glance, this might not seem like a very big deal. That is, until you go to the list of Bilderberg attendees for the meeting in 2014, and you find that one of the three Greek participants, Alexandra Mitsotakis, just happens to be the chairwoman of Action Aid Greece. It seems the Bilderberg group may have been trying to impose its interests upon the Syriza party via the Action Aid nonprofit group. This might explain why Liberaki was so intent on promoting an alliance with Syriza, and why there was talk that Topotami could tame the wave of awakening that was spreading across Greece. It might also explain why Syriza rejected any alliance with a center-left party, choosing instead to go right across the board to the far-right Independent Greeks Party as they share the common Eurosceptic agenda. It might seem that Tsipras either knew or found out about this Bilderberg influence within Topotami and flatly rejected this alliance, to his credit. The Bilderbergers may have been betting that in a worst-case scenario, such as the one that has now come to pass, that the Topotami would be able to continue to push the cabal agenda within Greece while perpetuating the illusion that the people still had any say over their system of governance. Assuming this to be true for a moment, it would suggest that the cabal lost on their bet that Syriza would go with another left-leaning party for an alliance. Now it may also explain why things are getting extremely unstable within the European Union. The global cabal did not take this news very kindly, and they may have felt that it was now necessary to up the ante and send a message to both the new government of Greece and the potential new government in Spain. In a rather strange coincidence, the day after an election where an anti-austerity party wins in Greece and an anti-austerity party is polling very high in Spain, that an accident should occur involving both countries. The Associated Press, via an article in the Times of India on January 26th, reported that a Greek F-16 fighter jet crashed into other planes on the ground during a NATO training in southeastern Spain on Monday, killing at least 10 people, Spain's defense ministry said. The cabal may have been trying to send a hint to those riding the current wave of success in anti-austerity politics. Also, to very little surprise, the Syriza party has come out as being against Western intervention in Ukraine. In two articles appearing on the ekatimarini.com news website, Xenia Kounalaki wrote in the first article that Syriza must realize that it is now the Greek government, not a party running an election. This according to European Parliament President Martin Schulz, the first European official to visit Greece since the country elected Syriza. The statement seems odd, suggesting that political campaigns are about making promises to the people, but once elected, are expected to play by a different set of rules. In a second article, it was reported that Greece should not undermine EU policy on Russia at a time when it is seeking support from its partners over its economic problems, said Martin Schulz to Greek newspapers on Friday. Within hours of taking office last week, Greece's new government complained that it was not consulted before the European Union moved to threaten tighter sanctions on Russia. Democratic consent. There it is again, and this is very likely why the issue of commercial admiralty law, the legal foundation for global governance and control, may soon begin to be exposed for the system of slavery it represents. RT reported in an article on January 30th that Greece hasn't outright asked Russia for a loan, but Russian Finance Minister Anton Siluanov said Moscow wouldn't rule it out. His statement comes days after Greece openly opposed further economic sanctions against Russia. It had been reported that Tsipras had met with Russian ambassador to Greece on Monday, shortly after being sworn in as leader. The new government was quick to show support for Moscow and has openly called for an end to Russian sanctions and may veto any future sanctions. In other geopolitical news, moving over to Ukraine now, there are reports that are surfacing alleging that U.S. and NATO troops are fighting for the Kiev junta government in that country. It seems that the Ukrainian people have awoken to the lies and frauds that have been committed against them by the U.S., NATO, Israel, and others. Like the people of Greece, the Ukrainian people are now making a stand in the only way they know how to right now, and that is to avoid fighting for the junta puppet government for NATO. An article appearing on the Itar TASS Russian news site on January 27th has written that Ukraine's male population has massively started leaving abroad in search of jobs to dodge the current mobilization campaign. Entire villages are booking buses to dispatch their men as far as possible. Military committees are handing over the lists of fugitives to law enforcers and try to restrict the movement of men subject to conscription outside their native districts and areas, the Vesti publication wrote on Tuesday. According to Ukrainian Defense Minister Stepan Poltorek, about 104,000 people may be mobilized in 2015. Ukrainian Army's Chief of Staff Vladimir Talale said that draft dodgers would face from 2 to 5 years in prison, adding that women aged 25 to 50 could also be drafted into the Army if necessary. The same information had been reported 5 days earlier on the Future Trendcast blog page. The author of the blog page, Lada Ray, was born to a Russian father and Ukrainian mother and grew up in Odessa. She has worked as an international financial consultant, is a linguist, and also author of several books. In her article from January 22nd, she writes that in January 2015, Poroshenko announced a surprise mass mobilization of up to 200,000 people, including 60-year-olds, women, and children. Ray notes that immediately after this announcement, several things happened. A few of those things are listed as follows. Huge lines consisting of healthy men trying to avoid mobilization formed in front of medical offices and hospitals. Draft dodging is becoming an epidemic. People hide in cellars, change names, leave families behind, and move to other cities and countries as far from their home as possible. Immigration to Russia has reached staggering proportions. They are anti-Russian, yet they run to Russia to avoid being drafted to the anti-Donbass ATO. Kiev regime's plan to mobilize 50,000 and later another 150,000 in stages. So far, they are only able to fulfill their quota by about 25 to 27% due to draft avoidance. Experts estimate that soon draft fulfillment will be down to 10% of the quota. Despite such lofty mobilization numbers, even a fraction proved to be unreachable. Ukrainians write in social networks that they would rather go to jail than get drafted. It's a 3-year sentence for refusing mobilization. According to the military experts I've been listening to, and this is still Lotta Ray writing, the sloppy, unprofessional, not to say stupid actions of the Ukrainian army attest to the fact that real commanders and army professionals don't want to achieve victory in Donbass. Career officers don't want to fight as their hearts are not in it. What can we talk about if the Minister of Defense in Kiev is a policeman? They couldn't find a single military officer for this post. The Kiev army has been losing several hundred people a day since the beginning of their offensive. The losses ratio is 10 for the Ukrainian army versus 1 of the self-defense forces. That was a sample of the information found in the blog article. Ray emphasizes that the Kiev junta government actively needs to create war if its scam is to survive. At the moment, the evidence suggests that the scam is collapsing. The Western media is trying to sell the message that the Western-backed forces supporting the Kiev government are winning the campaign in Ukraine and that Russia is being increasingly isolated. Again, the emerging evidence seems to suggest the exact opposite. 2 days later, Ray shared more information about the conflict itself. She writes in her blog posting for the 24th that in the beginning of January, the junta president Poroshenko canceled the scheduled Minsk Peace Working Group meeting. On January 15th, he also canceled the Astana Summit Peace Conference, signaling that he didn't want any peace negotiations. Since his trip to Paris for the Unity March, Poroshenko declared mass mobilization and revived the brutal bombings of Donetsk and Lugansk, as well as other towns and villages in the DNR and LNR. Daily, dozens of peaceful citizens die, and houses, apartment blocks, factories, mines, water mains, power stations, gas pipelines, hospitals, museums, and schools are being destroyed. Meanwhile, in Kiev, Poroshenko, Nalivaychenko, Avakov, Yatsenyuk, Turchinoy, and their cronies resolved to restart a massive offensive on Donetsk and Lugansk, trying to retake the crucial Donetsk airport and other key points in both republics. Their other big goal was to cut off Donetsk from Lugansk completely. However, the result was the opposite of what they expected. DNR and LNR self-defense forces managed to quickly defeat the Ukraine army on all directions, despite the Kiev army outnumbering them 10-1. Immediately after losing on all fronts, Poroshenko announced that he wanted to restart the peace process. Pretty much all analysts predicted Poroshenko would remember peace negotiations as soon as his army started losing. That sentiment was echoed by Alexander Murdokuris, the international affairs editor for Russia Insider. In an RT interview on January 27, Murdokuris was asked about the escalation in the conflict, even though the Kiev government does not want peace, and while Ukrainian President Poroshenko tries to pledge his commitment to peace on the international stage. Murdokuris replied that the problem here is that Ukraine has repeatedly committed itself to peace deals and entering into constitutional negotiations with the people who are opposed to it in these eastern regions. Kiev has always withdrawn from these negotiations. They've never happened. What tends to happen is that when the situation seems to calm down, Kiev talks war. When the situation becomes more difficult for Kiev, it then comes back and once again talks about peace. While speaking to a group of students in St. Petersburg, RT quoted Russian President Vladimir Putin as saying that the Ukrainian army is not an army, but a foreign legion. In this case, a foreign NATO legion, which of course doesn't pursue the national interests of Ukraine. There now appears to be evidence to prove Putin's claim. An article by Tyler Durden on the Global Research website on January 26 writes that an odd video clip has emerged that appears to provide all the proof a U.S. intelligence officer would need to surmise that U.S. military boots are on the ground in Ukraine. As the following clip shows, a Ukrainian journalist approaches who she thinks is a Ukrainian soldier because he is wearing a Ukrainian military uniform and carrying an AK weapon, and she asks him as they run through the battle zone, "Tell me, what happened here?" His response, which requires no translation, speaks for itself.
Stop.
On my face, please.
Давай. Вон еще слово. Как радужно.
Lada Ray, on her blog posting for the 26th, also provided this video clip, but she went a bit further in her posting for the day, writing that there were lots of videos and other proof that appeared on the internet that shows beyond a shadow of a doubt that Americans and possibly Canadians, as well as other English speakers, are very much a part of the Kiev junta army. Proof and reports from locals in Mariupol continue pouring in that massive numbers of Western, NATO, US, Canada, UK, German, French, Polish, Lithuanian troops and weapons are being used by the Ukraine army to subdue the Ukrainian population, which doesn't want to live under a fascist regime. Therefore, we can say confidently that this is a foreign takeover of Ukraine by the West. Ray also offers that apparently the Bosnian defense minister resigned this morning over the NATO, US, EU pressure to sell weapons to the Kiev government. This was on the 26th. This, however, has not yet been confirmed. About the Kiev junta government, Ray writes, "They are desperate. They don't know what else to do to prop up the dying Kiev junta regime, but none of this will help. People everywhere are awakening, and not just in Ukraine." Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki was quoted during a press briefing as saying that the presence of foreign troops in Ukraine is false. An article appearing on SputnikNews.com website on January 27th quoted Psaki as saying that there have been rumors, which my understanding is that they are false, when asked about U.S. private armies operating in Ukraine, referring to recent videos depicting English native speakers patrolling streets of Mariupol. May the people of Ukraine continue to find the strength to resist the Western corruption that is destroying their country, and we hold the people of Ukraine in the energies of love and especially protection, so that they will no longer be forced to serve in actions that do not benefit them and only benefit the elitist few who are controlling all that is happening, not only in Ukraine, but around the world. May they find the strength, courage, and protection to stand and speak with the same united voice that the people of Greece have now done. In financial news, the geoeconomic events, much like the geopolitical events, are now becoming more visible publicly, and more questions continue to be raised as more people become more informed. For those who have even a passing interest in the global financial situation, it should be more than abundantly clear at this time that very significant things are happening at the highest levels. Ambrose Evans Pritchard, writing for the London Telegraph on January 24th, reported that the Governor of the Bank of England has warned markets to brace for possible trouble in 2015 as the U.S. Federal Reserve tightens monetary policy and liquidity evaporates, fearing that the new financial order has yet to face its first real test. Mark Carney said diverging monetary policies in the U.S., Britain, Europe, and Japan may set off further currency turbulence and test capital flows across the global economy, including the emerging markets. Did you catch that? The Bank of England governor saying the new financial order. Carney said regulators have cleaned up the banks and tried to prepare for the tectonic shift taking place in the international currency structure, but major risks remain. This will test the resilience of that new financial system. It has a potential feedback, and we have to be aware of that. We are particularly concerned about an illusion of liquidity that has existed in a number of financial markets. I would say that illusion of liquidity is gradually being disabused, he told an elite group of central bankers at the World Economic Forum last week. So it might appear that somewhere along the way the new financial system has been kicked in and is being integrated underneath the currently fading system. This may be one of the clearest public indicators that an acknowledgement has been made that a new financial system is in fact being brought into existence at this time. The question remains, however, now that a high-ranking acknowledgement has been made, how will it unfold from this moment, and what will it look like, and what will it mean to the average people? These are questions worth asking your political representatives to see what they will say, if anything. Another group attempting to take a shot at the new leadership of Greece is the ratings agency Standard & Poor's. According to Mark Jones in his Reuters article, S&P sent an early warning shot to Greece's new government on Monday, saying it could downgrade its sovereign credit rating even before its next planned review date in mid-March if things go badly. Alexis Tsipras has promised to end budget cuts and tax rises that sent unemployment soaring and impoverished millions. S&P only upgraded Greece in September, but Frank Gill, the rating agency's senior director of European sovereign ratings, said the uncertainty of a showdown over its debts with the rest of the Eurozone risked snuffing out its recovery. I'm going to stop here for a moment, as this is something I wish to point out to listeners, and especially new listeners. S&P is a ratings agency that gets its legitimacy from the current, albeit criminally corrupt, system of finance. One might expect that if a country takes a positive step towards bringing control back to the people, that this would be a good thing, because this is what government was supposedly elected to do in the first place. Yet, Greece gets downgraded. Russia was downgraded, and it seems any country that does not play ball with the global cabal gets downgraded as an attempt to punish them. Notice, however, Gill's comment about Greece risking having its recovery snuffed out. The question here is, whose recovery and on what terms? Greece risks its good credit rating within the cabal, and this is how recovery is defined. What the BRICS alliance of countries has been doing is effectively creating the new model by which the old one will be rendered obsolete. On top of numerous other actions being taken by BRICS in general and Russia in particular, an RT article on January 20th reported that the Central Bank of Russia will no longer use credit ratings from Standard & Poor's, Fitch, or Moody's that were assigned after March 1st, 2014. The decision comes after Fitch and Moody's downgraded Russian sovereign debt to just above junk status. Standard & Poor's will decide whether it cuts Russian debt to junk level by the end of January. What makes the nature of this ratings business suspicious is the next sentence in the article. Ratings cuts by the international agencies have increased since Crimea rejoined Russia in mid-March. At the same time, the West began to levy sanctions against Moscow. In response, RT reported on January 13th that the new Universal Credit Rating Group, UCRG, is being set up to rival the existing agencies Moody's, S&P, and Fitch, and its first rating will be issued this year. The setting up of UCRG is in its final stages, and it's ready to challenge the big three that currently dominate the industry. This, according to the managing director of Rus Rating, Alexander Ovnichtikov, who told Sputnik News Agency on Tuesday. The new agency will be based in Hong Kong and provide a check on the big three, which some analysts say don't provide an accurate reading of economic situations. It should be increasingly clear that ratings agencies are not truly legitimate and unbiased ratings for business practices, but only an additional economic warfare weapon used against those who are unwilling to play the game as the cabal has set it up. Over to general news now. Canada has once again been named in recent revelations from the files of Edward Snowden. This report first from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the CBC, in Canada.
It's called Project Levitation, and according to these new documents, Canada is watching 102 of the world's internet file sharing sites, the kind used to share things like music, movies, and photos. Canada is sifting through 10 to 15 million uploads and downloads every day, looking for extremists, accessing propaganda, videos, instructions on how to build a bomb. This surveillance expert reviewed the documents for CBC.
Canadians need to understand and have a debate about the extent to which it's okay for their government to be watching everything they do. Is it okay in the pursuit of radical extremists and defending Canadians from possible harm that the government sets up a giant digital X-ray machine over everything that we do? Because that's effectively where we're headed right now.
CBC got these documents from journalist Glenn Greenwald, who first broke the Edward Snowden stories. He says this is an example of Canada taking the lead among its allies in conducting mass surveillance.
You could be finding a terrorist, although probably much more likely you're finding a scientist or a journalist or a lawyer working on a case relating to some of those issues, or a student who's interested in those issues, or a citizen who's reading about them. And so you subject huge numbers of people to all kinds of very invasive surveillance based upon suspicion that is completely unfounded.
CSEC says it's all within their legal mandate to find foreign terrorists. The agency says it's not targeting Canadians, and if a Canadian citizen is incidentally caught up in this surveillance, they have measures in place to protect their privacy. Dave Seglin, CBC News, Toronto.
Of course, it is not readily known exactly what kind of procedures are in place that protect the privacy of Canadians, but then in a world where we are humans first, what difference does being a Canadian make when compared to the rest of the world? Because Canada is a country of immigrants anyway. Now, what is the CSE? A CBC article from June 14th of last year reported that the Communications Security Establishment, CSE, is the lesser known of Canada's two spy agencies and focuses on electronic surveillance. The CSE describes itself as Canada's national cryptologic agency. Simply put, it encodes and decodes secretive computerized messages. In today's cyber-focused world, that means sifting through online activity to hunt down and prevent potential attacks. The Electronic Surveillance Service has three mandates. It's expected to gather foreign signals intelligence, known among the spies as SIGINT, which specifically refers to monitoring online activity abroad. But it also has been given the task of protecting the government here at home from hackers and state-sponsored attacks on its computer systems. That gives the agency a dual mandate, offensive and defensive. Thirdly, the spy agency is expected to lend its technical expertise to law enforcement and security agencies, such as the RCMP and CSIS, Canada's primary security agency. The CBC website has posted a slideshow presentation within the link to this story, so any wishing to learn more about this agency and the Levitation Project can view these slides. Also posted within the article is a response from the CSE to the CBC, answering selected questions. One paragraph in the letter states the following: CSE is clearly mandated to collect foreign signals intelligence to protect Canada and Canadians from a variety of threats to our national security, including terrorism. CSE's foreign signal intelligence has played a vital role in uncovering foreign-based extremists' efforts to attract, radicalize, and train individuals to carry out attacks in Canada and abroad. What questions would you ask if you heard this? Here are the questions that come to my mind. 1. Where is it clearly mandated? By whom has it been clearly mandated? And with whose consent was this allegedly clear mandate received? 2. When they talk about a threat to national security, whose national security are they specifically relating to? 3. Who are they defining as extremist and why? 4. When talking about possible attacks in Canada, who is specifically being targeted? These are the kinds of questions that should be asked but are not asked because everyone has been conditioned through the mainstream media to assume that certain terms and definitions apply to the general population, when in reality it appears that they do not. Again, this is what the commercial system of admiralty law has been about, and it has been this system of rules that has been used against the people without their consent to secure their consent to be slaves to a smaller group of people creating the rules. The very rules that protect the global cabal from people who seek to expose them while justifying the security and force necessary to punish, penalize, incarcerate, or kill those who do not comply to those rules. The people of Greece are speaking out at risk. The people of Ukraine are risking jail to stand up for the right, their rights. I wonder what it will take to get Canadians angry enough to finally do something to create a better future, not just for Canadians, but for all humans on our planet and our planet herself. In continuing good news for the hemp industry, an article posted on the votehemp.com website has reported that the U.S. Congress has introduced the Industrial Hemp Farming Act with bipartisan support. According to the article, Vote Hemp, the nation's leading grassroots hemp advocacy organization working to change state and federal laws to allow commercial hemp farming, is pleased to announce the introduction of complementary bills in both the Senate and House, Senate 134 and H.R. 525, the Industrial Hemp Farming Act of 2015. If passed, this bill would remove federal restrictions on the cultivation of industrial hemp, the non-drug oil seed and fiber varieties of cannabis. With bipartisan support in the Senate and House, we are eager to see 2015 be the year Congress finally passes comprehensive legislation to legalize industrial hemp farming, said Eric Steenstra, president of Vote Hemp. Historic progress has been made on the issue this past year as farmers in Vermont, Colorado, and Kentucky planted hemp in 2014, thanks to Section 7606 of the Farm Bill, which allowed states to have legalized the crop-to-grow research and pilot hemp crops. Senate 134 was introduced on January 8th by Senators Democratic Senator Ron Wyden, Republican Mitch McConnell, Democrat Jeff Merkley, and Republican Rand Paul. H.R. 525 was introduced on January 21st by Thomas Massey, Republican, and Jared Polis, Democrat. H.R. 525 was introduced with a record-setting number of 47 co-sponsors for a federal hemp legalization bill. The article notes 21 states so far as having defined industrial hemp as distinct and removed barriers to its production. The sooner more hemp can be brought into production, the sooner a whole new series of greener industries can be brought online to provide almost anything that is needed within a community. This is one crop that regenerates within 3 months instead of decades for trees. It is a strong crop and apparently does not need pesticides. Hemp has more practical uses than almost any other single fiber available at this time, and arguably it is one thing that could help make a community self-sustaining all by itself. Part of the challenge, however, is finding sufficient support to help get hemp-based projects off the ground. In a separate but related article, Missy Baxter, writing for the Rolling Stone magazine, reported on January 8th that when Alex Mason, a gregarious 25-year-old South Carolina native, moved to Colorado in 2012 to pursue advanced wilderness EMT certification and a passion for mountain climbing, he never imagined that he would end up founding the world's first financial institution dedicated to the legal cannabis industry. That institution, the Fourth Corner Credit Union, received a green light from state banking regulators in November and is set to open in downtown Denver by mid-January. It turns out he ended up learning about the cannabis industry and he felt called to do something to help. He knew he could not do it alone, however. He wanted to create a credit union to support the cannabis industry. Baxter continues, the problem that needed solving was a big one. Although the U.S. Department of Treasury released banking guidelines for state-licensed marijuana businesses last year, most banks and credit unions still steer clear to avoid bureaucratic red tape and risk of hefty fines, since weed is illegal on the federal level. As a result, ganja entrepreneurs can have a hard time finding both legitimate funding and a secure place to stash what money they have made. The serious public safety concerns of a cash-heaving marijuana industry gave rise to an urgent need for a banking solution, says former Denver City Attorney Doug Friednash, who assisted in drafting the city's regulations governing cannabis and helped credit union organizers navigate complex legal issues. He says that the founding of the Fourth Corner Credit Union is a major public safety victory. It will also provide safe, regulated services to marijuana businesses, allowing this laboratory of democracy to thrive. For Alex, his motivation to found the credit union came from a more personal and emotional place. I didn't think it was fair that my friends in Colorado's legal cannabis industry were deprived of the one tool they really needed to succeed, access to banking, he says. They are legal. They pay taxes. They provide good jobs. They used the system to change the law, but now the law was punishing them for no reason. The article continues, adding that the Fourth Corner Credit Union holds the promise of getting an estimated $650 million in proceeds of annual cannabis sales per year in Colorado off of the streets and into a safe and well-regulated environment, Kenny says. The centerpiece to the Fourth Corner Credit Union will be a highly intelligent, cutting-edge anti-money laundering compliance unit. Despite the support, there are challenges. Baxter notes that Fourth Corner has applied for federal deposit insurance, but the application review could take up to 2 years, according to organizers. Fortunately for them, state-chartered credit unions can open while federal deposit insurance is pending, according to a little-known Colorado banking law. In the interim, deposits will be protected against theft by a federally approved surety bond, organizers say. If the federal insurance is ultimately denied, the credit union can ask the Colorado Division of Financial Services to allow it to operate under a private deposit insurance according to state law. Where there's a will, there's a way, and those who are listening to their inner guidance and willing to act upon it may just find that the universe opens up unexpected doors, even as more familiar doors begin to close around one. This is what the new revolution looks like, folks. The planetary energies of these times appear to be actively assisting in helping people to discern who is acting for the highest good of humanity and our planet, and who is not. In the past, the global cabal was able to laugh off any perceived accusations and simply label anything as a conspiracy theory or anyone as a conspiracy theorist. Politicians were able to maintain their image of pretending to serve their constituents while actively engaging in activities to the contrary while in their respective parliament buildings. There was a time when politicians didn't have to react because they knew the system would defend them and cover up anything. They also knew back then that most of the people were still asleep and were content to be ignorant sheep to what was going on around them and being done to them. Such is not the case any longer, and it is becoming more clear that the voice of the people is starting to touch a raw nerve with politicians, most especially those who have something to hide and defend. On January 29th, the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee met, chaired by Arizona Republican Senator John McCain. This report from C-SPAN covered the protest at the hearings as Henry Kissinger entered the room.
Former Secretaries of State testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee today about national security strategy, focusing on Iran's nuclear program, the conflict in Ukraine, and combating the Islamic State. Senators heard testimony from Henry Kissinger, Madeleine Albright, and George Shultz. At the beginning of the two-hour hearing, the chair of the committee, Senator John McCain, responded to protesters.
Well, good morning, all. I'd like to say to my colleagues and to our distinguished witnesses this morning that I've been a member of this committee for many years, and I have never seen anything as disgraceful and outrageous and despicable as the last demonstration that just took place about, you're going to have to shut up or I'm going to have you arrested. If we can't get the Capitol Hill police in here immediately, get out of here, you low-life scum.
McCain then went on to apologize profusely to Kissinger for the lack of respect to one whom McCain said served his country with the greatest distinction. Perhaps a day will come when politicians like John McCain will apologize profusely to the people of our planet for their lies, frauds, and crimes committed against humanity and the planet while they lived in luxury and free from accountability to their actions. What was not immediately noticeable as part of the protest was that some people were holding up handcuffs. As they were calling for Kissinger to be arrested, this might not seem so unusual for them to hold up handcuffs. The We Are Change website reported, however, the protesters were apparently part of a group called Code Pink, and the group was actually making an attempt to arrest Kissinger on the spot. This article also noted how one of the other testifiers, former Secretary of State George Shultz, he stood up to verbally battle the protesters, saying, "I salute Henry Kissinger for his many contributions to peace and security." That led to a standing ovation from the committee members and audience that drowned out Code Pink. This is how souls connected to the global cabal protect and defend each other. On the other hand, this is how courageous souls risk being arrested to bring forth a message of information that needs to be revealed to others to help them in their awakening. This is what the new revolution looks like, folks. In tech news for the week, spending time on a computer is both a blessing and a curse. How that time is used online is only one small part of the issue. There are numerous health issues of being at a computer for long periods of time. There are also the social issues, as people do not go out and have meaningful social interactions as much anymore. When we lose power to our homes, for example, there is the usual complaining and worrying that takes place for a while, and then the reality sets in and people begin to adapt. In the long power failure in North America in 2003, I was in Canada and scheduled to return to Sweden the next day. I stopped worrying about my flight and observed what was taking place in the neighborhood where I was at the time. People outside, talking and interacting. Children were starting to play on the streets. It became a social time and a community time. This is how technology separates and divides humanity while also contributing to our ill health. Tired parents, however, are glad to have their kids on computers so they do not have to exert as much energy to be with them, further eroding the family unit. An RT article on January 26th has reported, however, that a Russian student has apparently invented a bracelet that claims to offer help with computer addiction. According to the article, Russian students have invented a unique bracelet capable of preventing kids from spending too much time in front of a computer. Tracking children's biorhythms, it can even autonomously switch off computers, averting possible health-related consequences. The bracelet is currently in the final stages of development at the academic IT school of Perm State University, with a model ready for production expected by the end of the year. The project is aimed at lowering the psychological pressure experienced by the personal computer users. It's especially important for children as we live in the 21st century when kids have unlimited access to computers which don't always have a positive effect on them, said Dmitry Zotin, the bracelet's inventor and an academic IT school student, told RT. Spending too much time behind the computer can make it hard for children to sleep at night and increase risk of attention problems, anxiety, depression, and even obesity, medics warn. The bracelet will be tracking the child's cardiac rhythm and skin temperature using Bluetooth to transfer this data to a program installed on the computer. Based on the physiological data, the software will decide whether to change the computer's settings, adjust screen brightness, block certain parts of the operating system, or even shut down the whole PC. As for adult users, the bracelet will inform them that they are tired or stressed and advised to change activity or take a break, he added. Zotin says that in the future, his invention may also be introduced in offices to monitor how effectively employees use their time behind the computer and to ensure they get enough rest from staring at the screen. The bracelet is currently only compatible with desktop computers, with no plans yet to make a version for tablets and video game consoles. In health news, this is almost guaranteed to be a story that resonates with anyone who is now in a space of being more awake and aware. How many times have you stressed out, worried, pulled your hair out, or generally just got frustrated that those around you just didn't seem to get it? They don't understand what one is talking about, and perhaps in some more extreme cases, they may not even understand who one is anymore. This can often lead to polarizing conflicts within relations on numerous levels, from the personal to the professional to the societal levels. Greg Prescott, editor of the in5d.com website, shared a story recently on this topic. In this article, he explores 6 ways to talk to people who just don't get it. Keep in mind that not every suggestion will work for every individual or situation. It depends upon the individuals involved, and it depends upon the state of mind and heart of the individuals involved in each moment. These are guidelines that some of you may find meaningful in this moment of now. Prescott offers the 6 points as follows, with 1 or 2 examples offered for each. 1. Try to find some common ground. For example, most people have a curiosity about UFOs and have either seen one or knows of someone who has seen a UFO. Ask them about their beliefs in UFOs. Or, With an increase in the number of programs addressing UFOs and our galactic families, you could create a conversation to see if they feel this presence is good or bad. 2. Ask hypothetical questions. Prescott writes, "We've all asked these kinds of questions, such as, if you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be and why? Try asking a similar question, but from a spiritual perspective. If you could have any ability, what would it be and why?" Some people might want to fly or to be invisible, while other people might want the ability to read minds. From here, you can talk about ways to work on specific abilities, such as telepathy, seeing auras, and telekinesis. 3. Ask them to watch just one video. Find something that is particularly informative and share it with those around one. As Prescott notes, don't force the issue by asking them if they have seen the video yet. If they're still interested, they'll talk to you about it. 4. Look for opportunities to plant the seed. One may be out in public somewhere, and by making a casual statement. Prescott offers an example that one could make a statement about not having known much about GMO foods until having read a particular article or visited a website. This might happen while you are shopping, for example. Simple, very casual statements to people around you have a way of sitting with those around you to help them later on. 5. Make a statement. Be creative. Prescott suggests making a custom t-shirt to wear. People will ask. 6. Ask other like-minded people attending workshops how they connect with people. Prescott emphasizes that if one is not interested, then let it go. Once the light of curiosity has been lit, the rest will be up to them. It is important to note one thing, and this is a personal comment I am sharing. Each soul is being guided towards one's own awakening according to one's soul contract and one's life path. If one took a job or entered into a relation with another while on a particular life path that was not in alignment with who that soul was choosing to be, then the partner is not going to be the most compatible. But the partner will become a potential catalyst to help one move back onto the track of getting into alignment with oneself again. If done with love, it is possible that the partner who served as the catalyst will also begin to awaken and come along in the journey. Failing that, however, many relations will end because they were not ready, or perhaps they were not meant to move together for the next phase of their respective growth. Neither soul is wrong, and with mature intention, as relations end, if they must end, the closure process can recognize what is happening, and each will be able to lovingly honor the other for the lessons that were gained, so that the closure process brings a healthy and joyous clearing, allowing both to move on to their next experiences with a continued open heart for the highest good of all. By way of an announcement, I would like to thank all the people who reached out to connect with me after CVN launched on the new platform last week. I have not replied to a few people, and I apologize for this, but the issues are mostly the same. I would like to take a moment to help guide people regarding a slightly different procedure for downloading the broadcasts. There are two places to listen to the broadcast from the InlightUniversal.com website. One is from the direct link to the show page for each week. The other is to listen from the home page. At this time, however, there is only one place to download the show, and this is from the home page. When you come to the home page, you may have to scroll down to previous shows. Depending upon the date you are accessing this page, you may have to scroll further down to find the broadcast date you are looking for. To the right of each show, there are three options: download, play, and share. For most of you, you should click on download, and a window will appear asking you where you wish to store the downloaded broadcast. For a few others of you, however, this will not work. We believe it may have something to do with the browser you are using. I use Firefox, for example, and the download option does not work for me. Therefore, if the download button plays the broadcast and does not give you an option to download, you will have to do the following to get the broadcast downloaded. Right-click on the download button. One of the options you should see is Save Link As. Click on Save Link As, and the box should appear asking you where you wish to save the broadcast. So once again, for some of you, you click on download and it will work. For others, it may not work, so you will right-click on the word download and then Save Link As to bring the broadcast to your computer. This should resolve the issue for now. I have been attempting to contact the man who did the website for Cosmic Vision News for over 3 weeks now to try to set up a similar archive on the CVN website, but I have not received any messages from him. At this time, I am not sure when or if I will be able to have this archive set up on the website. I apologize for this. It is my hope that this will help clear up many of the initial questions that listeners seem to be having at this time. It is just a slightly different way of doing things. On another note, in my recent reporting about the Paris shootings, I included a video clip of what was allegedly a BBC reporter identifying the Paris shootings as a hoax. A CVN listener contacted me last week to say that this video was not a legitimate BBC report and that it had been fabricated. It is possible that someone may have been trying to help push the mainstream media into reporting more accurately the events that took place in Paris, but also more accurately covering all the global events taking place at this time. Although I am still not quite sure myself if the video is a hoax or not, I wanted to address the issue with you all. I still believe that the events in Paris were a staged false flag event, regardless of whether this video clip is accurate or not. I know many of you do understand that I am trying my best, but I also feel that it is important that if I'm going to achieve credibility with my listeners, I have to also be ready to report those times when I have gotten something wrong in a story. If the video is in fact fake, then I offer my apologies to you all. This is a perfect example of why discernment is so important. I am learning my own discernment in what I offer to you, but you must also use your own discernment with me, as I may not get all the facts as accurately as possible in whatever moment a story is prepared. Do not believe everything I report to you unless it feels right for you to do so, and accept any information as your truth in any moment of now. I thank that listener who contacted me. I misplaced the email, so I'm sorry I could not identify you and give you proper credit. You know who you are, however. In this week's final words, I unfortunately ran out of time this week and was unable to complete my original final words in time. As I'm still learning this new platform, I want to be sure I have everything ready in time. Having said this, I'm choosing instead to insert a clip from Wayne Dyer. Dr. Dyer is well known in many circles and is an international presenter and author of numerous books for personal growth. In this segment, Dyer shares some insights on how our thoughts alter our physical reality. As we move together in co-creating the new earth, this may be something that will resonate with you in this moment of now. Create a wonderful week. Until our next moment of now, here is Wayne Dyer.
The interesting thing about the positive and the negative are that we're learning through biochemical exploration and engineering. There are enzymes in the brain that release different endorphins into your brain as a result of the way that you think. A person who thinks a positive thought is not just saying, oh goody, I'm just thinking positive thoughts. They are affecting the chemistry of their body. And when you look at things like schizophrenia and some of the least understood of the mental illnesses, we say, yes, there's chemical imbalances there. And the scientists all get together and say, yeah, it's chemistry. What are you talking about all this thinking stuff? If we can alter the chemistry, we can alter the disease. Of course, it's true. I buy it 100%, but it's only 50% of the battle. What causes the chemistry to change in a human being? What causes an ulcer? Isn't that a chemical change brought about as a result of thinking? Isn't that what it is? Well, the same thing is true of a mental illness. Yes, the chemistry is different, but believe that you control your chemistry. It's your chemistry. You carry it around. It's yours. And every patient who I've ever worked with in the really severely disturbed realm still must understand that they're doing this to themselves. Yes, your chemistry is unbalanced, but don't believe that we're just going to put you on lithium, we're just going to put you on this drug, and the drug is going to, for the rest of your life, do it. You've got to believe that you can, in fact, alter any chemistry within you through the way that you think. What do you think blood pressure going up when you're under pressure is about? It's a chemical change brought about through thought. What do you think hypnosis is? I mean, we use it in medical practice all the time. Dentists use it all the time. You put yourself into a different state. There's no chemistry. There's no drugs. You're not getting any anesthesia. You're putting your brain into what is called an alpha state. And in that state, that you change through thought, which is everything. Remember, it's what you are. Thought is what you are. Thought is also what your husband is and what your children are. It's just your perceptions of them. That's all you get. You can't get to the process of what that human being is. You can only get to one level removed from the process and accept them for what they are in the process that they are. And when you put yourself into this state in a dentist chair, they can drill all day. They can do root canals. And you can think of just anything that you want to. And my dentist told me, Sid Weber, who used to be my dentist when I was living up here, told me that when he was undergoing training to learn this hypnotism, someone told him that he would give a post-hypnotic suggestion that his wedding ring was very hot and that he wouldn't be able to stand the heat of it, so that when that suggestion was given, his mind would go into this other state and he would have to take it off because it would be very uncomfortable. And he went through this thing, and then he mentioned the word, the hypnotic suggestion, and his finger started getting very hot, and he couldn't get the ring off because it was swollen. And finally, after a lot of struggling, he got it off, and there was like a third-degree burn around his finger. And this is a guy right here in town who's a practicing dentist. And the stories of the kinds of things that you can do through thought are not some magic boogaboo kind of thing. The man in India that we're talking about, who has an ashram in southern India, he's supposedly the highest spiritual being on our planet. He's this peaceful, beautiful human being who can make ashes like come out of the air. He's pulling dust out of the air through his belief. And everybody's going, ooh, how do you do that? I got to get you on the Merv Griffin show. For him, it's just as easy as it is for you to get up and brush your teeth in the morning. It's because of the pureness of that thinking system. I can control my thoughts. Store that away. My feelings come from my thoughts. My emotions, my angers, my hatreds, my love, my positive emotions, my negative emotions are all preceded by thoughts. They're the result of thoughts. They're the physiological reactions to thoughts. And emotions, which are very vital and very important to each one of us, can in fact be controlled by our thoughts in positive ways. I'm not an anti-emotion person. I'm not someone who believes that you shouldn't be emotional. I'm saying your emotions should never be immobilizing. They should never be defended as something that you use to keep yourself from being all that you can be, or explaining it all away because I'm just this kind of person. I've always been this way. I can't help it. That's my nature. That's the kind of person I am. You are the kind of person you have chosen to be as a result of how you use what you are, the pureness of your thought. It's all that you are. Your form is leaving. It's changing. In that little tiny drop of protoplasm that once was you, everything was programmed in you. Every hair that you have and every one that fell out. It was in that little drop of protoplasm, all right? That little tiny drop of protoplasm changes and changes, and everything that you need to be all that your form needs to house this soul that you are and these thoughts that you are wears out and changes and dies. But thoughts never die. Thoughts never die. That's what it means to be transformed. You've gone beyond your form. And everyone who has ever died, every form that has ever been in your life who has ever died, none of the thoughts that they are could possibly have died. How do you kill a thought? It's the highest form of vibration in the universe. How can you kill it? It's there. Be in tune with it. And you know, we would have a lot less trouble with death if we began to understand that death is just merely a form of transformation. That's all it is. It's a beautiful form. Imagine how necessary it is. Imagine what our planet would be like without it. It'd be very crowded. And yet, there's room for thoughts forever in an unlimited universe. You can't run out of space because you don't need any space for thoughts, do you? And that's what you are. Before you came here in that little tiny drop, there was no space for you. You didn't occupy any space, yet your essence was there. And it will always be there. And it's nothing to ever fear. You don't kill thoughts. Thoughts are what you are. And you can control them all.